When you listen to music, what attracts you to a song? The beat, the melody, the lyrics? Welcome to Auditio Divina, Sacred Listening with Heart, a podcast sponsored by Resurrection Catholic Parish in Green Bay, Wisconsin. For centuries, Lectio Divina, or sacred reading, has served as a spiritual practice that has helped people to reflect upon the scriptures with a four-step process. Katie and Tony, hosts of the popular podcast Revealed, also sponsored by Resurrection Catholic Parish, bring this ancient practice to the world of music. Through listening, meditating, praying, and contemplating or sitting with a song, the words and music come alive to add spiritual depth to the experience of listening. Let's join our hosts, Katie and Tony, as they lead us through this spiritual practice, ever ancient and ever new. Welcome to Auditio Divina, Sacred Listening with Heart.
Well, welcome to a brand new podcast called Auditio Divina, brought to you by Tony and I. We are your hosts for this podcast, which is crazy because this is a spin-off podcast. We have had so much success with our Revealed podcast. You know, we have been all over Green Bay and the United States, and even guess what? We have been listened to across the world. So it's time for us to kick it up a notch, and we are going to be bringing you this spin-off called Auditio Divina. So, Tony, why don't we just jump right in and tell our listeners, what is Auditio Divina?
So Auditio Divina, so we're calling this podcast Auditio Divina, Sacred Listening with Heart. And really it's a spinoff, as you alluded to, it's a spinoff of our Revealed podcast, but it's a spinoff of an ancient prayer practice called Lectio Divina. Lectio Divina has 4 steps to it, and we're going to use those same 4 steps. The first is auditio. We're going to listen to a song, and we are going to think about what word or phrase really strikes us in that song. We're not going to think too much on that. We're just going to, what touches our mind, touches our heart with auditio. The second step is called meditatio. So we're going to listen to the song a second time, and then we're going to kind of sit back and meditate, reflect upon what that word or phrase means in our life. Why do you think that struck you as you listened to it this time? And then the third step is called oratio. That's Latin for prayer. And so we're going to take that word or phrase that has stuck out in our mind and in our heart, and we're going to pray with that word or phrase. And then the fourth and final step is called contemplatio, which is Latin for contemplation, obviously. And then in that step, we're just going to sit with our word or phrase, just letting it sink deep into us. So those are the four steps of Auditio Divina.
And the cool thing is, we are starting this during a liturgical season, Lent. So we are actually tying this to the scripture that you're going to be hearing on Sunday. So the first Sunday of Lent is from the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 4, and it is known as the temptations. It is Christ being tempted by the devil. And so we brainstormed and try to come up with a song that kind of helps us understand this scripture with modern music. Tony, you want to introduce our song?
Right. So we're gonna start with a song, and we really intentionally, by the way, tried not to choose like traditionally religious songs. We want songs that people could reflect on, maybe be familiar with, but maybe not. But it's something you might hear on the radio or on Spotify or someplace like that. So this song is called Many Rivers to Cross. It's from Jimmy Cliff, who's really just a classic reggae type musician. And the version we're going to be using is called Live at Glastonbury. And I just love it because it's a live version that brings his heart and soul to this song called Many Rivers to Cross. Let's listen and listen for a word or phrase that strikes us in this song.
But Tony, remember that we can't play the whole song, so we're only going to play a clip. We have these copyright laws, so we're only playing the second verse of this song.
And as I pointed out in our Revealed podcast, I don't want to go to jail over this podcast. So
no.
Here we go. Let's listen to a clip of Many Rivers to Cross by Jimmy Cliff.
Many rivers to cross, and it's only my will that keeps me alive. I've been left wonderful years, and I merely survive because of my pride.
As we come back, we're going to name our word or phrase. My word was survive.
And my phrase is many rivers to cross. And we'd invite you, the listeners, to do the same. What is your word? What is your phrase that most struck you? Now we're going to listen a second time to that same clip. And this time, we're going to invite you to be thinking about why that word or phrase struck you today as you listen. So let's listen again to Many Rivers to Cross with Jimmy Cliff.
Many rivers to cross, and it's only my will that keeps me alive. I've been left wonderful years, and I merely survive because of my pride.
So now we come back after listening to Jimmy Cliff a second time, and we go to our step of meditatio, reflecting on that word or phrase that most sticks out to us. So we're going to do that, but we invite you to do that right alongside of us. So, Katie, what was your word or phrase again?
My word was survive.
And why that?
It really spoke to me because there's so many times in life where it's a struggle just to survive. We have so many temptations and so many times where it's just keeping one foot in front of the other, just surviving through those tough times. And those are the times that I really lean upon Christ and become in solidarity with him as he is tempted. He is shown so many possibilities that he says no to, that he just survives. He survives in the wilderness. He survives the temptations, and he comes out for the better. And to know that I have a relationship with Christ that will help me survive those tough times, it speaks to me.
Thank you. And for me, it was many rivers to cross. I think that's such a powerful metaphor for the challenges in our life. Jesus had these challenges as he went out to the desert for 40 days and 40 nights. And sometimes we take that so literally, like, yeah, okay, he was out there and he met the devil, some evil, and he was tempted in certain ways. And we don't really dig much deeper than that or link it to our lives. And I think this metaphor of rivers to cross is so powerful in the fact that in my life, I know I've had a lot of rivers to cross, a lot of struggles, a lot of challenges that I had to get over. I had to go through that river, go over the river, get beyond the river. And Jesus did too. And he could have given up. Like, he could have just said, you know what, I'm not going to go through that river anymore. Or I'm going to leave this desert now. It's only been 15 or 20 days, but I'm not up to the challenge. But he didn't. He went through that river. He went through the desert for 40 days, 40 nights, faced the challenge, and came out the other side ready to do ministry for 3 years with that power and depth that came from having crossed those rivers.
Tony, when you introduced this song, I didn't understand why you picked this song. But then you explained to me like you just explained your word. And it helped me to see Scripture and this account in a whole new light. And I'm hoping that this is what happens to those of you listening, that by doing Auditio Divina, that we are helping you to see Scripture in a new light.
And hopefully see songs in a new light. So to add those two together, to maybe, this song may not be as familiar as maybe some that we're going to use down the line here, but to take a song and link it to Scripture and kind of mine out the meaning there in both, having them kind of juxtapose each other a little bit, we're hoping that brings some incredible fruit into your life. So we're going to listen a third time, and this time we're going to invite you to take your word, your phrase, and pray a bit. So let's listen to Jimmy Cliff one more time.
Many rivers to cross, and it's only my will that keeps me alive. I've been left walked for years, and I merely survive because of my pride.
We now invite you to take your word or phrase and then bring that to the sacred, the holy, to God. Pondering, perhaps, what was it that God put into your heart that made that word or phrase strike you so much today? Bring that to prayer, thanking God for this opportunity to reflect a little bit more on how Jesus was tempted in the desert and how we're tempted as well. Well, we welcome you back to our final step, the fourth step of contemplatio or contemplation, where we're going to listen to the song one last time and just rest in our word, our phrase, and in the presence of the holy and the sacred. So let's listen a final time to Many Rivers to Cross by Jimmy Cliff.
Many rivers to cross, and it's only my will that keeps me alive. I've been left walked for years, and I merely survive because of my pride.
Welcome back to listening to that clip from Many Rivers to Cross. We now would invite you to just rest in the presence of the holy with your word, your phrase. Let it sink deep into you so you can take that word or that phrase with you into your day, into the rest of this week.
As we come back together, let us share what we're going to do to let this word permeate into our lives. So my word was survive. How can I have this word be a part of my life going forward? And it's to remember that Jesus survived the wilderness. Jesus survived the temptations to be in solidarity with me. And so when times get tough for me, I'm going to reflect back on that. I'm going to reflect back on how I can survive like Christ did.
My phrase was many rivers to cross, and as I go into this day and into this week, I'm going to remember that I have crossed a lot of rivers in my lifetime, And I'm going to be called upon to cross additional rivers in the next days, weeks, months, years ahead. And I think sometimes it's in our looking back that we find wisdom and strength to know that we've done it before. We can call upon the sources of strength that we did before, and we can go forward in the knowledge and the hope that strength, that power, that spirit will be with us as we encounter future challenges. So I'm going to take many rivers to cross into my day and into my week, remembering I've gone there. I'll go there again, but I'll be all right.
Well, we cannot thank you enough for joining us on our very first spin-off, Auditio Divina, Sacred Listening with Heart. Please come back and join us for our next song, which is going to be
I Am Changing by Jennifer Hudson.
Yeah, maybe I'll get you to sing that one too, Tony.
I doubt it, but there's always hope.
Well, always hope. There's always hope. All right. Well, thanks for listening, and we'll catch you on the flip side.
See you next time.
Auditio Divina, Sacred Listening with Heart, has been a production of Resurrection Catholic Parish in Green Bay, Wisconsin.